The abandoned moon of Kepler 742 hung like a cracked pearl in the void, its surface scarred by centuries of meteor impacts and neglect. Thea Jensen stood at the viewport of her research vessel, the Kronos, her dark eyes fixed on the ruins that had drawn her here. After 15 years as a space archaeologist, she had learned to trust her instincts, and something about this place called to her. Atmospheric reading stable, Dr. Jensen announced her ship's AI, Helix. Though I must note again that this site isn't on our approved research roster. Thea adjusted her environmental suit settings, a slight smile playing on her lips. The best discoveries never are, Helix. Keep the engines warm. The surface of Kepler 742 crunched under her boots as she made her way toward the ruins. Her scanner picked up faint energy signatures, unusual for a site that had supposedly been abandoned for millennia. The ruins themselves were unlike anything she'd encountered, smooth, dark structures that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As she approached the central building, her scanner began picking up stronger readings. The entrance was sealed with what appeared to be a solid wall of the same light-absorbing material. But Thea hadn't become the youngest recipient of the Galactic Archaeological Society's Achievement Award by giving up easily. She pressed her hand against the surface, surprised to find it warm to the touch despite the moon's frigid temperature. Immediately, lines of iridescent light spread from her palm, forming complex geometric patterns across the wall's surface. "Helix, are you seeing this?" she whispered, her breath fogging her helmet's visor. "Affirmative. Energy patterns match no known civilization in our database. Recommend immediate withdrawal and notification of the Galactic Council." But Thea barely heard the AI's warning. The wall was dissolving beneath her touch, revealing a corridor that stretched deep into the structure. The air inside was breathable, according to her suit's readings, though stale with age. She moved carefully through the corridor, her footsteps echoing in the darkness. The walls were covered in writings unlike any she'd seen before, they seemed to shift and change as she looked at them, as if alive with their own inner light. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, and Thea's breath caught in her throat. In the center of the room, suspended in a column of shimmering energy, was a being that defied description. Its form seemed to shift between various states, sometimes appearing humanoid, sometimes more feline, sometimes something entirely alien. But what struck Thea most were its eyes, ancient, intelligent, and filled with an unmistakable plea for help. "Remarkable," she breathed, approaching the energy field. "A Nexary. They were supposed to be extinct." The being's eyes focused on her, and suddenly Thea's mind was filled with images, a civilization of shapeshifters who had once been guardians of cosmic balance, betrayed and hunted to near extinction by those who feared their power. This one had been imprisoned here as a living battery, its energy being slowly drained to power technology she couldn't comprehend. The control panel beside the energy field hummed with power. According to the symbols she could decipher, releasing the being could have catastrophic consequences. The Nexary were sealed away for a reason, if the ancient warnings were to be believed. But as she looked into those eyes again, she saw something that transcended species, a desperate need for freedom, a spark of dignity that refused to be extinguished by centuries of imprisonment. "Helix," she said quietly, "delete all records of this location from your database." "Dr. Jensen, I must protest. The implications of interfering with." "Delete the records, Helix. That's an order." As her AI complied, Thea began working on the control panel. The symbols were complex, but she'd always had a gift for understanding ancient systems. As she worked, she felt the Nexary's presence in her mind, guiding her hands. The energy field began to flicker, and Thea's scanner screamed warnings about power surges. The whole chamber shook as ancient systems began to fail. "Warning," Helix announced, multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace in orbit. Energy signatures matched Galactic Council vessels. Thea's hands moved faster across the controls. Someone must have been monitoring this place. "We're about to have company." The energy field collapsed with a sound like shattering glass, and the Nexary fell forward. Thea rushed to catch the being, surprised by how solid it felt despite its shifting form. Up close, she could see patterns of light moving beneath its skin, like stars swirling in a living galaxy. The being's form stabilized into something vaguely humanoid, though still alien in its grace and fluidity. It looked at her with those ancient eyes, and a voice spoke directly into her mind. "I am Kypris," it said. "And you have either doomed or saved your entire species with what you've done here today." Before Thea could respond, the chamber's emergency lights began flashing red, and the sound of boots on metal echoed from the corridor. The choice to free Kypris had been made, now they would have to face the consequences together. The real question was, had she just made the discovery of a lifetime, or had she unleashed something that should have remained imprisoned in the dark? The sound of boots grew closer as Thea helped Kypris steady themselves. The Nexary's form continued to shift subtly, like oil on water, but maintained a broadly humanoid shape. "Can you move?" Thea whispered, already calculating escape routes in her head. "My strength returns slowly," Kypris replied in her mind, their voice carrying undertones of both exhaustion and determination. "But I believe I can manage." The chamber's only other exit was a maintenance shaft that her scanner had detected earlier, a tight fit, but their only option. As they moved toward it, the first energy blast struck the wall behind them, leaving a smoking crater in the ancient material. "Stop!" By order of the Galactic Council. The voice echoed through the chamber, followed by the heavy footfalls of armored troops. Thea yanked open the maintenance shaft's access panel. "Helix, initiate Protocol Omega. Get the Chronos ready for immediate departure." "Acknowledged, Dr. Jensen. Though I feel compelled to point out that this course of action will likely end your academic career." "My career is the least of our problems right now," Thea muttered as she helped Kypris into the shaft before climbing in herself. They crawled through the narrow space as energy blasts peppered the entrance behind them. The shaft was a maze of intersecting passages, but Kypris seemed to have an intuitive sense of direction, leading them through the darkness with surprising confidence. "The facility's power core," Kypris communicated. "We must reach it. There are things here that cannot fall into their hands." Thea wanted to argue, the power core would be the most heavily guarded part of the facility, but something in Kypris's mental voice told her this wasn't merely about escape. The Nexary was protecting something far more important. They emerged into a vast circular chamber dominated by a pulsing crystalline structure. The power core's light cast shifting shadows across banks of ancient technology that hummed with barely contained energy. This technology, Thea breathed, her archaeologist's instincts taking over despite their dire situation. "It's not just for containment, is it? This entire facility is some kind of laboratory." "Yes," Kypris confirmed, moving toward the core with purpose. "The beings you call the Ancients built this place to study our kind. To learn the secret of our connection to the cosmic fabric itself. What they learned here." The Nexary's form shimmered with what Thea interpreted as distress. "It should never have been known." Before Thea could ask more questions, the chamber's main doors burst open. A dozen armed troops poured in, led by a figure Thea recognized with a sinking heart, Director Randall Vale of the Galactic Archaeological Council, her former mentor. "Excellent work, Dr. Jensen," Vale called out, his familiar warm smile now seeming cold and calculated. "I knew if anyone could crack this facility's defenses, it would be you. Though I must admit, we expected it to take longer." Thea's mind raced as the implications hit her. "You've been watching me. All those grants, the anonymous tips about promising sites, you were steering me toward this place." "Of course." Vale spread his hands in a gesture of false benevolence. "Your talent for understanding ancient systems is unmatched. We needed someone who could unlock this facility, and you were perfect. Your tendency to bend rules, your fascination with the mysterious, all it took was planting the right breadcrumbs." Kypris moved closer to the power core, their form becoming more fluid, more dangerous. Thea could feel waves of cold anger emanating from the being. The council has known about this place for centuries, Vale continued. About the Nexari. Their power could revolutionize our understanding of the universe itself. Think of what we could learn, what we could achieve. By torturing and imprisoning sentient beings. Thea spat. Is that what the council stands for now? We stand for progress, Dr. Jensen. The advancement of knowledge. Surely you of all people can understand that. But Thea wasn't listening anymore. She was watching Kypris, who had placed both hands on the power core. The crystalline structure was beginning to pulse with increasing intensity, and she could feel a building pressure in the air. The price of progress, Kypris's voice echoed in her mind, now thunderous with power, should never be the sacrifice of wisdom. The Nexari's form began to glow with the same energy as the core, their outline becoming a blinding silhouette. Vale's smile faltered as his instruments began screaming warnings. Stop them, he shouted, but it was too late. Kypris looked at Thea, their eyes now burning like twin stars. Trust in me now, as I have trusted in you. The power core erupted in a cascade of pure energy, and Thea's world dissolved into light. When Thea's vision cleared, she found herself in a cavern that seemed to be made of living crystal. The walls pulsed with soft light, creating patterns that reminded her of stellar nurseries viewed through deep space telescopes. Kypris stood beside her, their form more stable now but still radiating power. Where are we? She asked, her voice echoing strangely in the crystalline space. A sanctuary, Kypris replied, their mental voice gentler now. One of the last safe havens of my kind. What you would call a pocket dimension, hidden between the folds of spacetime. Movement in the shadows caught Thea's attention. Other beings emerged from the crystalline walls, some appeared humanoid, others completely alien, but all shared Kypris's fluid grace and inner light. Among them were humans as well, dressed in what appeared to be modified council uniforms. A tall woman with silver-streaked hair stepped forward. I'm Commander Rook, she said, extending her hand to Thea. Former Council Special Operations. Welcome to the Resistance. Resistance? Thea looked between Rook and Kypris. Against what exactly? Against those who would reshape the universe to their will, said another voice. A being that appeared to be made of shifting shadows and starlight emerged from the group. I am Zarin, Elder of the Nexari. We have much to discuss, Thea Jensen. The next hour was a crash course in a history that had been deliberately erased from every database in known space. The Nexari, Thea learned, weren't just shapeshifters, they were living embodiments of cosmic balance, capable of manipulating the fundamental forces that held reality together. Our abilities, Zarin explained, come from our connection to what your scientists call dark energy, the force that maintains the expansion of the universe itself. We were meant to be guardians, maintaining the delicate balance of creation. But the Council, Commander Rook continued, her face hardening, or rather, the shadow organization that controls it, discovered a way to harness this power. They'd been capturing and experimenting on Nexari for centuries, trying to develop weapons that could reshape reality itself. Thea's mind raced with the implications. The facility where I found Kypris. A battery, Kypris said softly. They drain our essence to power their experiments. Each attempt brings them closer to breaking the fundamental laws that keep the universe stable. We've been fighting a secret war, Rook explained, gesturing to her fellow humans. Those of us who discovered the truth and couldn't stand by. But we're losing. The Council's influence grows stronger every day, and their experiments more dangerous. Which is why your arrival gives us hope, Zarin said, moving closer to Thea. Their form rippled like the surface of a black hole. You didn't just free Kypris, you showed that humanity is capable of seeing beyond prejudice and fear. Of choosing what's right over what's expedient. Thea absorbed this information, her archaeologist's mind connecting pieces of a puzzle that spanned millennia. The ancient ruins I've studied, the unexplained technological leaps in our history. All results of their experiments, Rook nodded. But each success comes at the cost of cosmic stability. They're literally tearing apart the fabric of spacetime, and they either don't understand the consequences or don't care. There's more, Kypris added, moving to stand beside Thea. Director Vale wasn't just using you to access the facility. You have something they need, something in your very genetic structure that makes you unique. What do you mean? Zarin waved a starlit hand, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the cavern. It showed a double helix, but unlike any DNA structure Thea had seen before. Sections of it seemed to phase in and out of reality. Some humans, Zarin explained, carry echoes of ancient encounters with our kind. These genetic markers allow them to interact with our technology, to understand our language instinctively. You are one of these few, Thea Jensen. It's why you've always had such success with ancient sites. Many of them were built by us or with our knowledge. Vale knew, Rook added grimly. They've been tracking people with these markers for generations. Your entire career was orchestrated to lead you to that facility. They needed someone with both the genetic key and the archaeological knowledge. Thea felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. Her entire life, her passion for archaeology, her uncanny ability to understand ancient systems, had been leading to this moment. But instead of feeling manipulated, she felt a strange sense of purpose. What do you need me to do? Kypris stepped forward, their form shifting to mirror her own for a moment before returning to its natural state. Help us prevent them from accessing the ancient Nexary archives. If they gain that knowledge, they'll have everything they need to complete their weapons. The universe as we know it will cease to exist. And if we succeed, then we begin the work of healing, Zarin said. Of restoring the balance that was lost. But first, we must prevent its complete destruction. Commander Rook checked a device on her wrist that displayed rapidly changing symbols. We don't have much time. Vale and his people will have already started accessing the backup systems at other facilities. We need to move now. Thea looked around the cavern at this unlikely alliance, humans who had sacrificed everything for the truth, and ancient beings fighting to protect the very fabric of reality. She thought of all the ruins she had studied, all the mysteries she had sought to unlock, never knowing she was part of something far greater. Then let's get started, she said, meeting Kypris's starlit gaze. Show me what I need to know. The real battle was about to begin, and the stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. Deep within the crystalline sanctuary, Thea stood before an ancient archive terminal, her hands hovering over controls that seemed to shift and dance beneath her touch. Kypris stood behind her, their presence a comforting warmth in the otherworldly space. Focus, Kypris guided, their mental voice gentle but urgent. Let the knowledge flow through you. Your genetic memory knows how to read these systems. The symbols on the terminal's surface began to align themselves, responding to Thea's touch in ways that defied conventional physics. As she worked, images flooded her mind, the true history of the Nexary, and the terrible price of their power. We weren't created, Kypris explained as Thea absorbed the ancient knowledge. We emerged when the universe itself achieved consciousness. We are its immune system, meant to maintain the delicate balance between order and chaos. The archive showed her visions of the early universe, Nexary beings moving through the cosmic web, their actions subtly guiding the formation of galaxies, preventing reality from tearing itself apart as space and time settled into their final forms. Commander Rook's voice crackled over the comm system. Multiple Council ships detected entering nearby space. They're searching dimensional frequencies. We don't have much time. Thea worked faster, her fingers dancing across the controls as centuries of knowledge poured into her mind. The Council's experiments, she said, her voice tight with concentration, they're not just weapons, are they? They're trying to replicate your ability to manipulate reality itself. Yes, Zarin appeared beside them, their form rippling with concern. But they don't understand. Our powers aren't tools to be used, they're responsibilities to be carried. Each time we alter reality, we must maintain the cosmic balance. For every action, there must be an equal reaction. A holographic display erupted around them, showing the damage already done by the Council's experiments, tears in the fabric of spacetime, regions where fundamental forces were beginning to break down. Thea's scientific mind reeled at the implications. The Council thinks they're advancing humanity, Rook said, joining them at the terminal. But they're like children playing with forces they don't understand. Each experiment pushes us closer to total cosmic collapse. Suddenly, the sanctuary shuddered. Alarm signals pulsed through the crystalline walls, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with tension. "They found us," Zarin announced, their form becoming more militant. "Veil's forces have discovered how to breach dimensional barriers." Thea's hands moved faster over the controls, desperately trying to complete the knowledge transfer before it was too late. But what she found in the deepest parts of the archive made her blood run cold. "There's something else here," she whispered. "Something about a failsafe. A way to reset everything." Kypris and Zarin exchanged looks that spoke of ancient burden. "The ultimate balance," Kypris explained. "If reality itself becomes too unstable, we have the power to reset the universe to a point of stability. But the cost would be the erasure of everything that currently exists," Zarin finished. "All life, all civilizations, everything would be rewound to a point before the damage began." The sanctuary shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the crystalline walls, Thea could see spatial fractures beginning to form, signs that Veil's forces were breaking through. "Why are you showing me this?" Thea asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "Because," Kypris said softly, "your genetic connection to our kind makes you capable of initiating the reset. If all else fails, if Veil succeeds in weaponizing our power, you may be the only one who can prevent the total destruction of reality itself." The weight of this knowledge settled over Thea like a physical force. The power to save reality by destroying everything in it, it was a responsibility too vast to comprehend. "Breach in Sector 7. Rook's voice cut through her thoughts. "They're coming through." The archive terminal suddenly blazed with light, completing its knowledge transfer. Thea staggered as the full understanding of Nexary power flooded her consciousness. She saw it all now, the intricate web of forces that held reality together, the delicate balance that the Nexary maintained, and the horrible vulnerability that the Council's experiments had created. "They're here," Zarin announced as the first explosions rocked the sanctuary. "Thea Jensen, you now hold knowledge that could either doom or save all of existence. The choice of how to use it will be yours." Kypris placed a hand on her shoulder, their touch sending ripples of energy through her body. "Whatever you decide, know that you are no longer alone. You are part of something greater now." As Council forces burst into the chamber, Thea stood between her new allies, the power of creation and destruction humming through her veins. The time for running was over. Now she would have to decide not just who to fight, but what to sacrifice to win. The crystalline sanctuary erupted into chaos as Council forces poured through dimensional breaches. Energy weapons clashed against Nexary powers, creating surreal distortions in the fabric of reality itself. Through it all, Thea stood at the archive terminal, her mind racing with the weight of impossible choices. Director Veil stepped through the largest breach, wearing an exoskeleton that pulsed with stolen Nexary energy. "The knowledge, Dr. Jensen," he called out, his voice distorted by the power coursing through him. "Give us the archive data, and we can elevate humanity to its rightful place as masters of reality itself." "Masters?" Thea laughed bitterly, watching as reality fractured around them. "Look what your experiments have already done. The universe is tearing itself apart." The air crackled with energy as resistance fighters engaged Council forces. Commander Rook led her people with tactical precision, but they were outnumbered. Beside Thea, Kypris and Zarin moved in perfect synchronization, their powers creating barriers of warped spacetime to protect the archive. Small sacrifices, Veil dismissed, taking another step forward. His exoskeleton left reality-warping footprints in its wake. You of all people should understand, Thea. Think of the knowledge we'll gain, the powers we'll unlock. Thea felt the failsafe protocol burning in her mind, the knowledge of how to reset everything, to undo the damage. But the price would be unimaginable. Every life, every moment, every memory would be erased. A massive explosion rocked the sanctuary as Vale's forces breached another wall. Through the chaos, Thea saw council scientists setting up equipment, preparing to drain more Nexary essence, to push their experiments even further. Thea, Kypros's voice echoed in her mind, even as they fought off 3 council soldiers. The dimensional barriers are collapsing. Reality itself is becoming unstable. You must choose. She could see it happening. The walls between dimensions were breaking down, allowing fundamental forces to bleed into each other. If it continued, the entire universe would unravel. Vale raised his hand, and arcs of stolen Nexary energy lashed out, pinning Zarin against a crystal wall. Enough games. Give us the archive data, or watch your new friend suffer. But Thea wasn't looking at Vale anymore. She was looking at the space between spaces, seeing reality as the Nexary saw it. The damage wasn't just in this sanctuary, it spread across the cosmos like cracks in a windshield, growing larger with each passing moment. There's another way, she said suddenly, her voice carrying with newfound power. The failsafe isn't the only option. Kypros turned to her, their form shifting with surprise. What do you mean? The Nexary are cosmic balance incarnate, Thea explained, her hands moving over the archive terminal with purpose. But balance doesn't always mean destruction and recreation. Sometimes it means transformation. She input a complex sequence into the terminal, drawing on both her genetic memory and her archaeological training. The sanctuary filled with a new kind of energy, not the destructive force of Vale's weapons, but something more fundamental. The original purpose of the Nexary, she continued, her voice growing stronger, wasn't to control reality, but to guide it. To help it evolve naturally. Vale, you wanted to master these forces, but you never understood them. The power isn't in domination, it's in harmony. The terminal blazed with light as Thea activated an ancient protocol, one so deeply buried that even the Nexary had forgotten it. The energy coursed through her, through Kypros and Zarin, through every being in the sanctuary. What are you doing? Vale demanded, his exoskeleton sparking as new forces interfered with its stolen power. Creating balance, Thea answered. Not by destroying everything, but by helping it change. Evolve. The way it was always meant to. The protocol took effect. Reality shifted, but instead of breaking apart, it transformed. The barriers between dimensions didn't collapse, they became permeable, allowing controlled flow of energy and matter. The Nexary's power wasn't drained or weaponized, but shared, spreading through the cosmos in a way that all beings could access safely, naturally. Vale's exoskeleton overloaded, its stolen energy returning to its rightful place in the cosmic balance. Around them, Council forces found their weapons powerless, while the very nature of spacetime shifted into a new configuration. You see, Thea said, watching as the transformation spread outward from the sanctuary, the real power was never about control. It was about understanding. About growing. Everyone can be part of the balance, if they're willing to accept the responsibility that comes with it. The fighting stopped as everyone, human, Nexary, and Council alike, felt the change taking hold. It wasn't an ending, but a beginning. A new phase of cosmic evolution, guided by wisdom instead of ambition. Kypros moved to stand beside her, their form now perfectly balanced between all their possible shapes. You found the third path, they said with pride. Not destruction, not domination, but transformation. What happens now? Commander Rook asked, looking at her hands as new awareness flowed through her. Now, Thea said, smiling as she felt the universe adjusting to its new state of being, we learn. We grow. We become what we were always meant to be, not masters of reality, but part of its ongoing story. The sanctuary's crystals pulsed with new light, and in that moment, Thea knew she had made the right choice. The universe didn't need to be reset or controlled. It needed to be understood, to be helped along its natural path of evolution. And now, at last, all its children could be part of that journey together. Vale and his forces were taken into custody, but they too would have a place in the new order, once they learned to understand the true nature of power and responsibility. The age of exploitation was over. The age of harmony had begun. As Thea stood with her allies, watching the transformation spread across the stars, she realized that this wasn't the end of her archaeological career, it was just the beginning of a much greater expedition. One that would explore not just the past, but the very nature of reality itself. And this time, she wouldn't be exploring alone.